All right, welcome to the explainer. Let's jump right in because we're looking at something incredibly fascinating today. Have you ever wondered how something absolutely monumental, like a fundamental absolute truth, could be sitting right in front of your face but remain completely invisible to you? Today, we are unpacking a really mind-bending paradox straight from chapter 7, text 25 of the Bhagavad Gita. This text dives deep into the ultimate limits of human perception, and it really gets to the bottom of why we so often miss the reality that is literally staring us right in the eyes.
So, here is the core historical and philosophical question we need to tackle. If the divine was actually right here on Earth, why on earth didn't everyone notice? The source material tackles this head-on. It argues that when Krishna was present on Earth, physically visible to anyone who happened to be walking by, his true absolute nature was definitely not manifest to everyone. It forces us to ask that ultimate question, what is the actual difference between merely looking at something and truly seeing it for what it is?
And this comparison perfectly illustrates that massive divide. On one side, we have the devotees, historical figures mentioned in the text like the Pandavas and Bhishma. During the grand assembly of the Kurus, they actually possessed the right perspective. They recognized Krishna's true nature as the supreme. But then, you contrast them with the non-devotees and the everyday common man. According to the text's purport, to these folks, who the text refers to here as foolish and unintelligent, Krishna just looked like an average, ordinary guy. They simply didn't have the specific lens required to see past the physical exterior.
Which brings us to section 1, the mechanism of illusion, or yoga-māyā.
To actually answer our opening question about this huge gap in human perception, the text introduces a really specific Sanskrit term, and that is yoga-māyā. The source defines this as an internal potency. Think of it like a veil or a highly advanced barrier that covers the supreme. It actively keeps him hidden from those without devotion. So it's not that the divine isn't present, it's that there's an actual active mechanism of concealment in place. It's literally filtering out anyone who just isn't ready or equipped to handle the truth. The source material backs this up with a seriously beautiful metaphor. Listen to this quote from the prayers of Kunti in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Lord is covered by the curtain of yoga-māyā, and thus ordinary people cannot understand him. I mean, the absolute key word there is curtain. The text doesn't say people are just naturally blind, right? It says there is an active, functioning curtain draped right between the observer and the absolute truth.
Moving into section 2, the blinding glowing effulgence.
Okay, so what exactly is this curtain made of? You'd intuitively think a veil meant to hide something would be dark, wouldn't you? Like a heavy shadow or really thick fog. But look at this striking prayer from mantra 15 of the Ishopanishad. The devotee prays, "May you kindly remove this glowing effulgence that impedes my seeing your eternal form of bliss and knowledge." Notice what's happening here. The observer is literally asking for light to be removed so they can finally see clearly. They want a brilliant, glowing covering drawn back. Because when you look at the translation of this concept, you realize the veil isn't darkness at all. No way. It's a blinding, glowing effulgence, known as the Brahmajyotir. It acts as a massive covering that hides the true transcendental form, which the text calls the Sak Chid Ananda Vigraha. The source points out that less intelligent impersonalists simply cannot see past this overwhelming light. It's wild to think about, right? The brilliance itself is the disguise. We're looking at illusion not as a lack of light, but as an overwhelming, blinding excess of it. Let's look at section 3, beyond scientific calculation. This brings us to a really fascinating clash of paradigms. How does an ancient explanation of a divine mystery like this actually stack up against our modern tools? Human logic, scientific observation, all of that. Well, the text explicitly addresses this limitation. We have this incredible quote from a prayer by Brahma in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Learned scientists and learned scholars can examine the atomic constitution of the material world, or even the planets, but still they are unable to calculate your energy and potency. This brilliantly highlights the ultimate limits of material observation when you're faced with what the text calls the master of all mystery. So we can break it down like this. On one side, learned scientists possess absolutely incredible, tangible abilities. They can examine atomic constitutions. They can map out entire frickin' planets. But that is contrasted directly against the Supreme Personality. The source material states that this divine energy simply cannot be calculated and that the internal potency is always expanding.
It basically takes the measurable, finite achievements of human science and puts them right next to an unquantifiable, ever-expanding mystery that sits completely outside the boundaries of any scientific calculation.
And finally, Section 4, Uncovering the Inexhaustible. So, what actually happens if someone manages to pierce through that expanding mystery? What lies completely beyond the veil of yoga-māyā once that blinding light is drawn back? The text grounds its conclusion in a really powerful Sanskrit word, avyayam. This translates to inexhaustible. It refers to the infallible and eternal nature of the Supreme's form and energies. This right here is the absolute core truth hidden behind the Brahma Jyotir. It tells us that whatever is behind that curtain isn't just another layer of material stuff. It is fundamentally limitless and utterly immune to exhaustion.
Which brings everything in our explainer together into a really clear summary. What is the true nature of the Absolute according to this ancient text? Well, it's unborn, it's infallible, it's inexhaustible, or avyayam, and it is an eternal form of pure bliss and knowledge. These are the fundamental, transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality, and they are exactly what that brilliant veil of yoga-māyā so perfectly obscures from our everyday material point of view.
Which leaves us with this final, kind of wild thought to take away. If our absolute greatest scientific tools can only measure the material, the atomic, the planetary, how much of actual reality is just permanently hidden from us behind that veil? It's a question that completely challenges the limits of human perception. It asks us to seriously consider that the most absolute truths out there might just be shielded by a brilliant, blinding light. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the depths of what you can and what you perhaps cannot actually see.